Hello and welcome to the WrestleTalk News. I'm Luke Owen and this is Wrestling News. And yes, I do have a bit of a croaky voice after last night's excellent watch-along party for Night of Champions. Our top story today is, of course, centered around the closing moments of last night's Night of Champions, and in a moment that mirrored Sami Zayn's unforgettable Royal Rumble chair shot heard round the world, the catharsis felt when Jimmy Uso finally snapped and superkicked the soul out of Roman Reigns well and truly stole the show, to the point that I don't think anyone remembers that Natalya wrestled for a title. Not only was it long overdue, Jimmy that is, not Natalya, some actual storyline developments in the Bloodline saga since WrestleMania has provided some intrigue and excitement for this week's SmackDown. Yes, the Bloodline storyline may be back to being that must-see TV once again, so props to you, WWE, you did it. Especially as the wise man himself, Paul Heyman, put out a short clip on Twitter of him boarding that Bloodline private jet. However, it's unlikely that any of those customary Bloodline celebratory seafood platters were available, as Heyman captioned the post with, "Your tribal chief, Solo and I are jetting back home from WWE Knock. We will talk about this in detail Friday on SmackDown." So yeah, with the Usos, or at the very least certainly Jimmy, out of the Bloodline, the next natural question is, what next? While I'm sure Roman is going to beat the ever-living tar out of Jimmy at some point, will WWE give the less appreciated Usos a one-on-one title match, or will Money in the Bank see the Usos take on Roman and Solo in tag action? That match was previously reported by Worked Wrestling to be in consideration for Money in the Bank in London. However, Dave Meltzer has also noted in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Reigns is expected to defend the title at the show, noting the top contenders for that match could be either Bobby Lashley or one of the Usos. However, there is a potential other wrinkle to this story coming our way. Following Jimmy's superkick party all over Roman's face, his own father, WWE Hall of Famer Rikishi, would post a few interesting tweets. Rikishi posted 3 short and very cryptic messages, seemingly in response to his son's actions. First saying, "And so it shall be done," then, "Stay in your lane," and thirdly, "Enough." And to top it all off, the Big Quiche posted that classic blood emoji alongside a gif of Don Corleone from The Godfather with the caption, "I'm going to make him an offer." Fans in the comments in response were running wild, pleading with the WWE Hall of Famer to return on this week's SmackDown and back up Jimmy and Jay, and I, for one, would love to see that. Not only because I'm an Attitude Era kid, but also because, well, the idea of Roman Reigns getting a stink face is somewhat hilarious. Fightful Select have a few notes from the show itself, firstly noting that all staff and talents were looked after very well on the trip, and, perhaps crucially, Vince McMahon was not present for the show. Whether he was putting in his input on the creative side of things from afar is an unknown factor, but he wasn't there physically for Night of Champions. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select also got a message from a higher up in WWE which said, "See, no concerns about Rollins' schedule following Seth winning the World Heavyweight Championship," which seems to be a direct reference to the story that was put out a couple of weeks ago that WWE were concerned about putting the belt on Seth after him taking a role in Captain America, New World Order. Also, for what it's worth, WWE.com have put some clarification on whether or not this new World Heavyweight Championship is in the same lineage as the old WWE World Heavyweight Championship, or even with the old WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Because according to the official WWE website, Seth is the only holder of this belt with the longest reign so far of 17 hours. So yeah, it's a new world title and not a continuation of the old belt. At least, according to WWE.com, which remarkably is not a reliable source of information when it comes to WWE and where their creative is heading. Back to Fightful, and they also note that Cody's arm break injury is, well, I think we all presumed, a work. However, enough people asked SRS to check, so he did, and yeah, it's a work. People think kayfabe is dead. But what does this mean for Cody and Money in the Bank? Well, Fightful Select are reporting that the feud between Cody and Brock is going to continue, but there's no clarification on whether or not that will be at the next show, which is Money in the Bank, or the show after that, which would be SummerSlam. At this point in time, Brock is not announced or promoted for Money in the Bank in London, which would presumably put Cody in a strong position to be in the ladder match instead. And speaking of Money in the Bank, this week has been rife with reports of potential contestants in this year's men's match, as well as who is being touted as a potential winner. Originally, it was reported by Worked Wrestling that LA Knight was an early frontrunner for the briefcase. However, this week they also reported that Triple H favorite Dominic Mysterio was a potential candidate for a mega push. However, all of that talk may be for naught, as we could instead be discussing a different member of the Judgment Day. Once again, according to Worked Wrestling, Damian Priest is planned for the ladder match and is being viewed backstage as a potential main eventer ever since his impressive performance against Bad Bunny at Backlash last month. But that's not all, as they also revealed a perhaps more surprising name that could make the cut for Money in the Bank, as Chad Gable is on WWE's list of potential candidates for the match. So for those keeping track at home, for Money in the Bank, that's a lineup of LA Knight, ex-Con Dom, Damian Priest, and Chad Gable, with potentially some Cody Brock action sprinkled on top. But who you got? Let us know who you want to win Money in the Bank, or at least be in the match, in the comments down below. Another name that would usually be a prime candidate for this sort of situation would be the Scottish psychopath Drew McIntyre. However, ever since WrestleMania, he's gone completely dark, literally on social media and figuratively on TV, as we've nary heard a peep about Master Drew. Now, obviously, he was part of the draft a few weeks back, but nobody's actually addressed where he's been for the last month or so. But perhaps that could be about to change, as Drew was both name-dropped on last night's show in the match between Gunther and Mustafa Ali, as well as being shown in a video package after the show went off the air. But it is important to note that this is one of those typical video packages that air on the WWE network in place of Peacock ads. If you're outside of the States, you know the ones I mean, like that Liv Morgan one, you know the one that they always show it. McIntyre has been in the news as of late, however, with reports that his contract with WWE is set to expire in the not too distant future, and there are reports of his unhappiness within WWE and could potentially look to work elsewhere. Somewhere like AEW maybe? And you know what? Speaking of AEW,
there's more wrestling tonight.
Yes, AEW's Double or Nothing is coming to you from Las Vegas, and we'll be doing live reactions to the show over on the WrestleTalk podcast channel, so make sure you subscribe and enable notifications to always on to know when that goes live. There's also NXT Battleground, but well, let's be honest, I don't think anyone cares about that show. Anyway, despite Double or Nothing being a few hours away, it turns out there's still time for some last-minute changes, as it's been revealed that a few participants in the Blackjack Battle Royal for Orange Cassidy's International Championship have pulled out of the match. In a rather peculiar turn of events, QTV's Harley Cameron announced via their Twitter account that Powerhouse Hobbs would not be competing in the match for reasons. And as a result, QT Marshall and Aaron Solo would also be withdrawing in solidarity. Solidarity for what? I've no idea, but since the Powerhouse Hobbs has been part of the advertising for Collision's debut in June, perhaps it could have something to do with that. It's now a question of how much of a last-minute change this was, as all three men were announced for the match on Friday's Rampage, and yet were missing from the official graphic shortly thereafter. Sticking with uncertainties for tonight's show, an AEW Women's Champion Jamie Hayter's status for the event has been very much up in the air this week, as reports of her current injury status. Both Dave Meltzer and Sean Ross Sapp are reporting that Hayter is legit injured, with SRS saying that she's been dealing with the issues for the better part of a month. However, as of right now, she is still surprisingly expected to defend her championship tonight against Toni Storm. This was alluded to by Tony Khan during his media call on Thursday. However, he did also confirm that Hayter was not cleared to compete. While allowing Hayter to compete while hurt may seem silly on the surface, expect this to play into some sort of storyline, which makes the likelihood of crowning a new champion in Vegas all the more likely. SRS had said on a previous Fightful podcast that the women's scene in AEW was set to dramatically change over the next few days. Regardless, we here at WrestleTalk want to wish Hayter the best in dealing with her injury issues, and hopefully she can get the recovery time that she needs. And please be okay for All In. If I don't get to see Jamie Hayter wrestle at All In, I'm going to be so mad about it that I may tweet something angry about it, and then I'll delete that tweet because I'll feel bad, because it's not her fault. It's not AEW's fault either. But I'll then feel really guilty about it for the rest of the week. And I'll probably then tweet out an apology tweet as well. Maybe do it in a notes app or something. But yeah. Feel better, Jamie. And if you want to see what happened at our excellent watch party for Night of Champions last night and how we all reacted to Jimmy Uso super kicking Roman Reigns, here is a clip while I finally play my Game Boy Advance.
Oh! And again, a 2.9. Roman Reigns breaking up the cover there. Adam Blampier doing his NWO fingers there.